Introduction. Every single one of us has the drive to succeed. However, sometimes that drive is not always accompanied by the knowledge that we need in order to do so. Fortunately, there are many ways that you can gain the skills that are necessary in becoming a success. In fact, it can be broken down into simple step-by-step instructions so that you and anybody else can achieve their dreams. It can be so discouraging at times to know what you want to do with your life or your time, but be unable to understand where to start. It is one of the most difficult things in life when you have a goal, but you do not actually have the tools that you need to see it through. Nobody deserves to be discouraged that way, and we can all overcome this obstacle with time and persistence. It takes patience to achieve something great, but if you are unable to begin, then you will never end up where you want to be. In this training, you're going to be handed all the tools that you will need in order to become a success. A lot of people believe that the only way to accomplish a goal is to plan for every step of the way, and in a way that can be true. However, some of us are more motivated when our plans are loose and freeing, and we are able to modify them to suit our schedules and our lives. No matter what kind of person you happen to be, you can succeed and you can achieve your dreams. In this training, you're going to find out a lot more about yourself than you have probably ever considered before. Because one of the most important things that you must do in order to achieve success is to know yourself inside and out. People who do not know themselves are unable to predict their own flaws and shortcomings and plan for them. When you can't plan for the ups and downs, then success is often very elusive. That doesn't mean that it is impossible to succeed. As long as you're open and honest with yourself about your goals and your shortcomings, then you have all the tools that you need in order to begin working away at your most important plans. Make sure that you are serious about beginning before you read this training, because when you take that first step, there is no going back. Once you get started, there is no excuse that you can make in order to let yourself feel comfortable in slacking at your goals. There's a popular saying, where there is a will, there is a way. And that has never been more true when it comes to planning for your success. No matter how difficult it might appear, you're going to find that once the process of succeeding is broken down into a step-by-step format, there is nothing that you can't do. As long as you are willing to take on all of the work that needs to go into succeeding at your particular goal, then you're going to be a success. And sure, sometimes not every goal is going to be met. There are going to be ideas that, every once in a while, might need to go on the back burner or be given up entirely. That does not make you a failure. In fact, if you are willing to learn from these experiences and continue to move forward, all that they serve to do is to add to your success. If you want to be a well-rounded, confident, successful person, and you are hoping to achieve those dreams as soon as possible, follow this step-by-step guide to learn exactly what needs to be done in order to plan for your success and reap the harvest of your hard work as soon as possible. Let's start now. Know where you are going by visualizing your goal. One of the hardest things about succeeding can sometimes be knowing where you want to end up. Sure, we all have a generalized idea of success as having a lot of money and working at doing something that we are passionate about. However, that isn't enough. What you need before you can succeed is a detailed outline of exactly what it is that you want to succeed at. Without that, all of your planning would be for naught. A lot of people prefer not to think about where they want to end up, because maybe sometimes during childhood we have been discouraged from thinking big. We are oftentimes discouraged and told that we are daydreaming and that we should not get ahead of ourselves. Our motivation is squashed at an early age when people tell us that we are not being realistic enough and that we should make sure that we are doing something that is both reasonable and stable. That means that we are often discouraged from taking the risks that we need to take before we will ever succeed at anything in this life. That can be very dangerous, especially to a driven and motivated person. We all have something that we want to accomplish in this life, and if we are not allowed to think in depth about that, then we may never actually take the steps that we need to take in order to get there. It can be so toxic to listen to the people around us who are telling us that we should not be thinking about things that we want to think about. When we are unable to develop our vision, then we soon forget that we have a vision at all, and we get stuck in the humdrum routine of everyday life. Nobody wants to be stuck there. And this is how you get out of that rut and start succeeding. To begin with, think deeply about exactly what you want to do and why you want to do it. Using visualization techniques can be extremely helpful when it comes to achieving your goals. First of all, You should visualize where you want to end up, presuming that your goal is successful. What is your ultimate outcome? Without knowing that, there is a lot of white noise in the way that prevents you from going after your dreams and believing that your goals are actually realistic enough that you could accomplish them, provided that you were able to devote enough time and energy and resources to that project. Once you have a very clear idea of what you want to do, you should also start to visualize the steps that you might need to take in order to get there. This doesn't mean a detailed outline quite yet, as this will come in later steps. But you should have a mental idea of what you're going to have to encounter when it comes to making your dreams a reality. Planning for success, of course, does involve real plans, and this visualization process is going to help you understand what you are going to be dealing with when it comes to getting those plans off the ground. Step 1 should be fun and exciting. You should begin to feel energized after you have begun to explore your ultimate goal. This is going to be the inspiration that continues to drive you forward along your path of planning for success. Without that motivation, it can be very easy to become discouraged by other people and by the challenges that we naturally face when we are attempting to achieve a goal. No matter how big or how small, set goals that challenge you. Those challenges should not be discouraging so much as they should be proof that we are working towards something wonderful and we are enriching our lives by doing so. Once you have held on to that motivation and you have been able to visualize your goal in depth, then it is time to move on to step 2 and work on learning more about you. Getting to know your strengths and weaknesses. When we think of a successful person, we often picture somebody who is very confident and capable. However, we often don't stop to think about how they got that way. Sure, it seems at least in mainstream portrayals of successful men and women that many successful people are full of themselves. So it seems hard to believe that they will be able to do the type of introspection that this step is going to require. If somebody already believes that they are perfect, then they are unlikely to believe that there is any room for improvement. However, there is always room for improvement, and the person who is willing to see that and acknowledge it and work on those steps that need to be taken in order to improve are the most likely to get somewhere. If you don't believe that you have any weaknesses that might get in the way of achieving your goals, that itself is a weakness. That type of thinking can backfire when it comes to your plans. Nobody is infallible. And the more willing we are to accept that, the more likely we are to succeed. That doesn't mean that you have to go around telling everybody about how you are bad at this or that and giving the impression that you lack confidence. As a matter of fact, a lot of this process is going to be personal to you. And it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily share every step of the way with your friends and family and coworkers. Actually, it's fine if you don't, just as long as you're finding some way to be held accountable to your actions and face your weaknesses head on. By being able to look inward and realize that maybe perseverance isn't your strong suit, or maybe you need to work more on self-discipline, you are actually giving yourself a new goal that will help you to achieve the bigger goal. We can call these little goals support goals. A support goal can help you to become the person that you need to be in order to actually achieve the success that you are envisioning for yourself and your plan. Without these little support goals along the way, then your likelihood of success dwindles. But if you are willing to take the time for introspection, you will discover that these support goals will help you to stay on track. Introspection is relatively simple. Sometimes all it takes is listening to feedback about your behaviors objectively. This can be difficult for all of us. We don't like hearing from other people that there are ways that we are lacking, so maybe try looking inward first. Think about the ways you know that you could be better, and yet you still have not found the time to improve in those ways. Maybe you don't know how. Only you are going to be able to determine what your true weaknesses and your true strengths are. Once you have identified those, there are thousands upon thousands of resources, from websites to self-help books, that can help you to learn how to cope with your weaknesses and become a more well-rounded person that is truly capable of achieving your goals. Many of us even have childhood trauma that can get in the way of our success. If we are raised to believe that we are not capable of succeeding, or that maybe we are not smart enough to succeed, then we are probably going to take it on the authority of the figures that have discouraged or traumatized us. Many traumatized people are self-sabotaging, and it can be extremely useful to get yourself into some sort of therapy or support program if you suspect that maybe you have childhood trauma or trauma even in adulthood that may be preventing you from living the life that you want to live. Step 2 doesn't have to be discouraging in thinking about the ways that we are lacking, however. there are also essential reasons that we need to focus on the ways that we are strong. Those strengths are going to be inherent aspects of our personalities and constitutions that provide us with the support and motivation that we need in order to succeed. Sometimes it can be just as difficult to discover what our strengths are as it is to think about our weaknesses. A lot of us are often down on ourselves and only find self-worth through the validation of others. However, there is a terrible way to live, and the self-made person is one who can validate him or herself without having to rely on the opinions or perceptions of others. It is good to be confident. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, most people believe that if you are too aware of your strengths, it can lead to a swollen ego and a big head that makes it hard for you to relate to other people and to see your own faults. However, actually knowing your faults and taking the steps that you need in order to turn them into strengths is a great way to help you build your confidence and start to feel okay with those icky parts of yourself that may make you feel uncomfortable and insecure. Think about what you are good at. What do people compliment you for the most? How many ways can you think of that you have developed skills that can be utilized in your process of planning for success? There are bound to be many ways and many talents that you have, whether they are discovered yet or not. If you aren't sure, you can ask a trusted friend or family member to try and help you to discover what it is that you have that other people may not. Make sure that they know that you are not fishing for compliments, because this can drive people away. Instead, ensure that they realize that you're simply trying to figure out a way to put your best foot forward. You will both be glad that you had the conversation, and you are going to be that much closer to planning for your success. Taking the time to take action. This may seem obvious, but sometimes we need a schedule before we can succeed. If we are not aware of how we are spending our time, then it can become extremely challenging for us to carve out the time that we need to take in order to work on achieving our goals. You need to be willing to take a step back and examine your life in terms of increments of time. For example, think about the time obligations that you have that are not disputable. What are the things that you have to do and set the time aside for every day? Whether you are the type who thrives with a strict routine or you simply like to live your life as it happens, there are undoubtedly going to be times that you have to set aside for certain tasks. Grocery shopping, going to work, cooking, sleeping, and things like that are all indisputable ways that you are obligated to spend your time. Take these into consideration and give it your best guess as to how much time you spend per day on those things. Come up with more if you have to. Consider all of your obligations and think about how much time that leaves you free throughout the day. It's actually surprisingly easy to find the time to work on a plan that you are especially passionate about. If your mind is focused enough on working on that plan, it is going to seek out the time that you need in order to work on it. It can be useful to give yourself a minimum amount of time that you are willing to work per day on your plan. However, you should also have the maximum amount of time. It can be dangerous and time-consuming to get so absorbed with one goal. Becoming single-minded can often lead to success, but not if you are sacrificing too much along the way. There is a delicate balance to these things, and this will be discussed more in depth later on in the training. Once you know how much free time you have during your day, think about what you can do to work on your goal in that amount of time. If it's not a lot of free time, think about the things in your list that might be flexible enough to allow you to work on your plans. If even that seems too difficult, maybe you should set aside time on days that you have more freedom so that you can work on your goals at least once a week as opposed to increments every day. The trick here is to find something that actually works for you, and you alone, that will help you to remain motivated to succeed. If you are able to take steps, measurable steps toward achieving your goals, success is inevitable. The key here is consistency. Even if you are not working on your plans daily, as long as you are constantly making progress as opposed to getting discouraged or distracted and not working on your goal at all, you will succeed. The fastest way to failure is to not even try. Holding yourself accountable for your success. Something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to planning for success is that when they are making the effort to achieve something, it can be hard for us to stay motivated. Once we start skipping one day, it can quickly snowball into skipping an entire week. Before we know it, we have lost track of our goals and our motivation. And there is no way for us to be roped back in. If we are not willing to hold ourselves accountable for our success, it can become extremely difficult to achieve our goals. So how do we begin to hold ourselves accountable for our success? This is truly a predicament. Most of the time we are too embarrassed to even talk about our plans with other people, let alone finding a way that they can help us to hold ourselves accountable to achieve our goals. Many of us are probably familiar with the creeping shame of being excited about a plan or a goal, only to have a friend ask us about it later on, long after we have already given up hope of success. However, this is where a support network really comes in handy. Not only should we hold ourselves accountable for success, but we should ask others that we trust to help us to hold ourselves accountable as well. Sometimes sharing our goals with others is a great way for us to stay motivated. If we are checking in with other people about the progress that we are making, not only does it make that progress more real to us, but it also provides us with a way to measure that success and stay motivated so that the people who are counting on us to continue down the path of planning for success are not let down by our lack of motivation and discipline. This is a common tactic that is often utilized for people who have goals to lose weight or become healthier people. Without a support network of this type, sometimes these goals can be difficult to achieve, especially when it comes to something that challenges our self-discipline. All planning can be a challenge in self-discipline. That is why it is important to find somebody to talk to about your goals, so that you don't find yourself discouraged or losing your motivation to succeed. Perhaps you could start a group on social media about your plan, so that you can keep others who are invested in your success updated about your progress. Or perhaps you should call a friend or family member that you trust on a weekly basis and check in with them about how your plan is going, and ask them if they have a goal that they want to succeed at as well. You can support each other and encourage one another about staying on track and continuing on the path to success. Everybody is capable of achieving their goals, but sometimes it can take a little bit of help to stay focused. That is a great way to get that help. Something else that can help you to hold yourself accountable is by making the challenging choices that need to be made in your lifestyle. Sometimes we have obstacles in our lives that can make achieving success much more difficult. If you are willing to continue working towards your goals, something that you might have to do in order to keep yourself accountable to those goals is to change your lifestyle. We briefly touched on this in the previous step. However, there are other things that you can do, regardless of your schedule, in order to hold yourself accountable to being the best you that you can possibly become and prime yourself for success. For example, it is helpful to make sure that you are getting more than enough sleep at night. If we are not getting enough sleep, then we are not functioning at our highest potential. And it is our highest potential that provides us with the tools that we need in order to succeed and achieve our goals. Our bodies simply don't work properly when we are not well rested. It takes a lot of body maintenance before we are going to really be in the mental and physical place that makes achieving our goals not only feel realistic, but become a reality. Something else that you should do, if you haven't already, is to make sure that you are eating a balanced and nutritious diet. If you are not eating well, you're bound to stop feeling well too. A lot of people overlook just how important it is to stay healthy. It not only helps you to achieve your goals, but it helps you to feel great while you're doing it. If we aren't getting the proper vitamins and nutrients that we need in order to survive at our highest capacity, it can make it difficult for our minds to focus, and it can make it hard to concentrate. When we are not able to put real focus into our goals, we are not doing everything that we can do to stay on track for success. Exercise is another great thing that you can do and implement into your lifestyle if you haven't already done so. When our body is working in the way that it is naturally designed to work, then the blood in our bodies flows better and improves our concentration and our mood. When we are releasing endorphins in our brains because of exercise, it helps us to stay motivated and to feel great. There are 3 key things that you can implement into your lifestyle so that you're doing everything that you can to hold yourself accountable for your success. If you are willing to do these things, then there will be little standing in your way to achieving your goals and turning your dreams into a reality. Setting realistic goals. Most of the time, people tell you not to plan too big, because it can hurt to set yourself up for disappointment. However, there is a system that you can utilize in order to plan for success without feeling as if you are dreaming too big. There is no such thing as dreaming too big, and in fact, you can view setting a goal kind of like doing a puzzle. Of course, you need to set up the framework first. Find all the straight edges and place them where they are meant to be. That is the outline of the big picture. Once you figure that out, it is simply a matter of understanding the unique qualities of each puzzle piece as you begin to put them all together within the framework of the puzzle. Make sure that you know each piece in detail and look at it as a small piece of a bigger puzzle. Yes, you already know the main idea of what you are going to do. However, each little puzzle piece that you put into place has to be an individual set of goals that makes a part of the whole so that you can achieve the big goal as well. For example, let's say you want to open a business. You have the idea for the business already. You probably even have a name for it picked out. You already know what you want the business to do and the services that you hope to provide to consumers. That is the framework of your puzzle. You already have that laid out and are ready to fill in the rest of the pieces. What you might not have necessarily is the puzzle piece filled in about how you're going to make the time to work on that goal, or another puzzle piece about how you're going to attract customers to your business, another puzzle piece about marketing, or another about acquiring the goods that you're going to sell from your business. Or maybe you need backers or financial support by way of loans or other resources. All of these pieces of the puzzle are going to help you make up the big picture. Once you have the big picture broken down into these little pieces, then there is no reason why you can't work towards success. Once you have your big picture broken down into little puzzle pieces that you can work on and put into place, once you've achieved your support goals, then it is time to evaluate the way you work. Sometimes unforeseen events can happen and they can throw you off schedule. Some people work really well under a structured and disciplined type of routine. Many successful people swear by having a good routine that they follow every day in order to make sure that they are accomplishing the things that they need to do in order to succeed. However, some people are more flexible and they need more creative space in order to thrive and meet their goals. It is usually a delicate balance between the two that makes somebody highly successful. Evaluate what works best for you, and do not feel bad if you don't fall into the same type of work process that other people use. You are your own person, and your goals require the best part of you if you're going to succeed. Make sure that you are able to put that best foot forward and keep the process moving on. No matter which style you happen to thrive under, one thing is true of everybody. Breaking a large goal or task down into smaller pieces is the surest way to achieving those goals successfully. Looking at something so big can be extremely intimidating, whether we're consciously intimidated or subconsciously. That intimidation can be dealt with by breaking these goals down in a way that is easy for anybody to achieve at any station in life. There is no reason to allow yourself to believe that there is any goal too large to accomplish. It is simply not true. As long as you are motivated and willing to put in the time and effort to see your goal through, there is a way that you can plan around any obstacles and succeed. Carving out the time to process and regroup. Going about achieving a goal can be extremely time-consuming and stressful. No matter how passionate you might be about your goal, there's likely to be something that drags you down and makes the process difficult. Sometimes those things affect us more deeply than they have to. When that happens, there is a process that we can undergo in order to provide ourselves with the fresh perspective that we need to move on and continue to succeed. To begin with, we need to carve out time every day for a chance to process everything that is going on. Most of us are so overwhelmed and consumed by the tasks of everyday life that it can be difficult to find the time to sit down and be quiet and reflect on our day and its events. This can be dangerous, especially to a creative mind who is hoping to achieve something great one day. If you are not able to process everything that is going on, it is likely to overwhelm you at some point and create a hitch in your goals. The sad fact of the matter is that at times, our challenges are self-imposed and can be avoided by the simple act of reflection. If we allow ourselves some quiet time to relax and give our minds a break from the hustle and bustle of our hectic everyday lives, then we are giving ourselves a great gift. We can recharge this way and come back to our goal the next day with a fresh perspective that allows us the opportunity that we need to plan for success. Sometimes just sitting down and vegging out is not necessarily going to be enough. This is where meditation can come in handy. Meditation has been utilized for thousands of years as a way to connect with ourselves and what some consider to be a divine or creative potential out in the universe. Whether you believe in the metaphysical properties of meditation or not, there are scientific benefits to using it for yourself. First of all, it allows you to begin to relax. Not only does this enforce your ability to concentrate, but it also provides you with insight about yourself and your plans. Meditation can be exceptionally rewarding, especially when you take the time to do it every day. Daily meditation practices can not only help you to relieve the stress in your life and improve your health, but it can also help you to be more in touch with yourself and your body's wants and needs. When we are honoring the truth of our bodies, it helps us to become successful because, as mentioned previously, taking the steps necessary to provide our bodies with nourishing food and exercise and honoring everything that it needs helps us to think more clearly and navigate relationships with more confidence. This can be extremely important when it comes to achieving a goal. Sometimes goals are better accomplished with support from other people. Meditation is also an important tool in self-awareness. When we are able to look inwardly and become more self-aware, it helps us to see all of the ways that we might be getting in our own way and sabotaging our own goals. We can become blind to this when we are so overwhelmed and consumed by the act of living in the moment. But with meditation utilized to providing us with more insight into ourselves, this can easily be a thing of the past. With more insight comes more willingness and understanding when it comes to truly working in your own favor. Sometimes we don't realize all of the ways that we are actually messing things up for ourselves. But if we are able to sit down and think about it rather than feeling distressed and overwhelmed, then we are able to make the changes that are necessary in ensuring our success. Another thing that meditation helps us to do is to find acceptance in the things that are difficult or impossible for us to change. When we are able to truly accept a situation as it is, rather than facing the strenuous mental drain of denial, then we are allowing ourselves the ability to work with what we are given without any excuses. It can be very easy for us as humans to get caught up in all the mental baggage that comes along with perceived failures. Sometimes what we feel as a failure is actually an opportunity to consider a different approach. With an alternative approach, we are able to view our challenges in a new light, and in so doing, provide us with the tools that we need to succeed. Burnout is an inevitable part of attempting to achieve any goal. Utilizing meditation is one of the most powerful ways that we can combat this natural phenomenon and provide ourselves with the necessary time that our minds need in order to recharge and process the sensory input that we receive on a daily basis. Rather than being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information that we are given in a day, when we can process that information and we give our minds a chance to recharge, we can come back the next day on top and ready to go as if it were the first day of stepping into our goal and attempting to achieve the success that we have always dreamed of. Taking action and evaluating your progress. Sometimes the hardest part of having a goal is getting started. When we don't know where to begin, it can be difficult to evaluate where we are going to end up. Fortunately, if you have followed steps 1 through 6, you should be doing pretty well when it comes to understanding what your end goal is, even if you're not quite sure how to begin yet. In step 7, you're going to learn all that you need to know about how to take action and move toward achieving your goals. Taking action is a strong phrase. There's a lot that can be said for priming the mind and providing yourself with the mental space that you need in order to begin to work on a goal and achieve it. Taking action provides the mind with a visual of somebody who is willing to stand up for what they believe in and who doesn't compromise. To take action, you're going to have to evaluate each of the little puzzle pieces that you broke your goal down into and determine which one is the most important to begin with. Once you have a good idea of where you should begin, look at that small chunk of goals that will help you to fill in a piece of the puzzle and start from the beginning. Do you need to call around for information? Do you need to do research? Do you need to talk to someone who is in the industry that you're planning to go into so that you can get more insight and information about how to succeed? Or are there resources that you have to accumulate? Do you have the money for those resources? Can you find a way to make the money for those resources, or can you take out a loan to gather the supplies that you need to begin taking action? All of these may seem like small steps, but it is the small steps that eventually make your goal a reality. So don't overlook or belittle any of these questions or the time that you invest into these goals. All of them are great ways to begin taking action and determining the best route to follow if you are going to succeed at your goal. Sometimes, most times actually, the hardest part of completing a task is getting started. You just have to pick a starting point and go from there. Make sure that you choose one that is logical and fits in with your goals and means when it comes to your end game. If you do this, you will find that it is easier to take the next step, and then the next, until you are virtually running toward the end of your goal. Most goals take a lot of time, and patience and long-term planning is very difficult for the human mind, especially when it comes to long-term goals like this. That's why it's so important to make sure that you are taking the time to evaluate your progress. If you don't, it can become very demotivating. When you are discouraged about the lack of progress that you are making, that doesn't mean that you are actually not making progress. That only means that you are having a hard time tracking the progress that you have made from your starting point. However, there are ways to combat this. One of the best ways to stay motivated is to keep a record of the goals that you have set and broken down and accomplished. Track your progress. There are many different ways that you can do this, and many people find that journaling is one of the most useful ways when it comes to achieving their goals. So how do you journal about your goals? To begin with, you should start writing down your goals in detail before you ever begin. This will help you to have a starting point and a physical record of your mind's perception of success. You can always refer to this and modify it as needed. Once you have that figured out, you should begin to break the goal down into those small pieces so that you understand just what you are taking on. You don't necessarily have to do this in a journal, but it is helpful to have that record there. Journaling daily is a great way of taking accountability for your goals and making the time to reflect on them. Not only that, but it provides you with physical evidence of how far you have come and how far you have left to go. You can write down things that you hope to achieve by the end of the week or the day or the month and keep track of all the different ways that you have made progress. A journal is also a great reference point to look at when you are feeling discouraged and that endgame seems elusive. When you are able to reference all of the different ways that you have been successful in the past and all of the different ways that you can continue to work toward being successful in the future, it is much harder to talk yourself into feeling as if you're working toward nothing. In your journal, you can also record things that help you to stay motivated. For example, quotes by people who are successful in their own field or who say things that inspire you can be recorded in your journal and read over on those occasions when you're starting to feel discouraged about achieving your goals. Journaling is a great tool and can help you to stay on track and consider setbacks as minor bumps in the road. When you look back on your progress and the challenges that you faced, you will be able to clearly see that there is a way around those challenges and realize that you were able to face them head on and still make progress. No matter how discouraged you might be at the time, it can help you to keep your perspective if you write a journal and contribute to it on a regular basis. With your journal, you can evaluate your progress and realize that you are actually taking steps that need to be taken in order to achieve your goals and succeed. It can be discouraging at times, but with a solid testament to your progress, you will be able to reference something that can help you to stay motivated and continue taking steps beyond the initial first step until you are well on your way to achieving your dreams. Learning from failure and letting go of the past. Most of us are born and raised with a deep instinct that tries to scare us away from failure. Failure is a scary and intimidating word that has many connotations in our society. When somebody's considered a failure, sometimes it can mean disaster in their social life or in their personal relationships. Sometimes it can even be the end of that person's self-esteem. The issue with that is that they are allowing society and other people to define success and failure for them. Failure is not a bad thing. Everybody makes mistakes. And if you're willing to learn and grow from them, then the world is your oyster. It can be very difficult for us to stay motivated to succeed, but especially so when we are met with unforeseen challenges and our plans begin to backfire. It only takes one time of messing up for us to start to label ourselves as failures. It is very easy for us to sink down onto that slippery slope that convinces us that we are no good and we never deserve success in the first place. This is a very self-defeating mentality. And if we are not willing to face it head on and challenge our own preconceived notions about failure and success, then we are going to have a very difficult time achieving our goals. Success does not come without a struggle. We have a birthright to make mistakes. We are not born knowing all that there is to know. We do not always make the right choices, and we do not always know the right thing to do or say in any given situation. We always have to play it by ear, and yet, somehow we are very unforgiving of ourselves when we slip up and do things that do not directly contribute to our personal goals at the time. Whether those goals are social or otherwise, failure is something that we are generally terrified of. That just seems silly. Everybody is bound to fail at some point, and we are never going to do everything right the first time. Not only are we human, but we are also individuals with different individual experiences and upbringings. We cannot compare ourselves to other people and define our idea of success by the measures made by other people. Each of us is different and has a different journey to take. When we start to compare ourselves to others or get tricked into believing that their definition of success is the right definition, that is when there is trouble. Learning from our failures is a fundamental part of life. It should be taught to us from an early age how to handle setbacks. But unfortunately, a lot of us never actually learn crisis management in that sense. Most of the time, humans seem comfortable just ignoring the bad things and trying to focus on the good. This is despite the fact that humans have a negativity bias, which makes it easier for us to think about and remember the bad things than it is for us to think about and remember the good. Perhaps this is why it can be so difficult for us to let go of the bad and focus on the good so that we can continue to move forward. It can be really hard for us to move on from the past, especially when it involves things that we are ashamed about or embarrassed by. However, we can start to shift our thinking so that we are able to really accept and understand the fact that not everything that we fail at is actually a failure. And even if it was a failure, that only provides us with more knowledge and wisdom for when we continue to keep trying for the next time. This might seem like an optimistic point of view, but the fact is, then when we are so bogged down by things that continue to drain us emotionally, we start losing the energy that we need in order to propel ourselves forward. We're stuck in the mires of our minds, keeping us frozen, to the point where we sometimes stop believing that success is possible at all. This is a very dangerous place to be in, and many people begin to lose their motivation completely and start to believe that failure is a term that actually defines them as a person. They no longer see the potential or the opportunities that they have surrounding them. All that they see is the darkness that they have begun to associate themselves with. That can lead to depression and other horrible debilitations, none of which any human deserves to be subjected to. And yet, we subject ourselves to those things, believing ourselves to be unworthy just because we made one little mistake or something did not go as planned. There are going to be unforeseen obstacles in any situation, but most especially when you have a specific goal in mind and your only passion in the moment is to achieve that goal. The world is working on a continuum, one that is full of other people and other obstacles and goals getting in the way and clashing with yours. Everybody is constantly reeling from the consequences of their actions and the actions of other people. Much of what we endure on a daily basis is due to chance. We are all just trying to navigate this hectic chaos surrounding us, and that can make it hard to stay focused on the task at hand, especially when it seems like there are other obstacles always in the way. But the only true failure isn't giving up, not forging your way forward. You have to have faith in your plans and believe in your vision, and understand that failure is only one natural step toward your goal, not against it. Think about how much you learn from making mistakes. All of us have to learn how to balance before we can walk. How many times do you think you fell down before you ever took your first step? That didn't make you a failure. That just made you a person in the process of learning. And that is what you will always be. You should never define yourself as a failure. You should define yourself as a person who is willing to try. Instead of letting your mistakes and the shame and embarrassment of the past bring you down, let go of it. Stop obsessing over the ways that you did not achieve the things that you hoped to achieve, and give yourself permission to try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. It's probably obvious that making a mistake isn't the end of the world, and you should always try and pick yourself up by your bootstraps and keep going forward. We have probably all heard the popular phrase, if at first you don't succeed, try again. We hear it from a very early point in our lives, and yet the meaning doesn't always stick. This can be true for a number of reasons, but probably most especially due to the embarrassment and shame that we feel when we are faced with our own shortcomings. As mentioned previously in this training, humans have a negativity bias that makes it very difficult for us to see negative events objectively. They are viewed as more significant and easier to remember than positive events. That is why it is so much more important that we continue to keep trying and do everything within our power to prevent viewing ourselves as failures. Being a failure is not a part of your identity. It is not a part of anybody's identity. Failure is task-related and simply that. If a task fails, we can shrug it off and try again, or take an alternative approach. If it succeeds, then we can feel great about our progress and continue to move forward. Either way, we can still move forward. That is the important thing to remember here. Of course, it is only natural that as humans we have an adverse response to failure. When a task that we are working on fails, and we feel as if we are never going to reach our goals, that is a valid feeling. You are allowed to feel that way. It is actually very dangerous for you to deny the fact that you feel that way. Instead, you could express your emotions in the journal that was recommended for you to keep in earlier steps, or to talk to somebody about the way your failure is making you feel, What is important here is to express what you are feeling so that you don't end up bottling it up. When you bottle up feelings like this, you start to internalize your feelings of failure and begin to identify yourself as a failure who embodies all of the negative qualities that you're feeling and not expressing. When you don't express and process your emotions properly, then this can lead to some dangerous situations. If you start to think that you are good for nothing, or you take all of your frustration and anger about your failure out on somebody who doesn't deserve it, then you are only going to start feeling much, much worse. Those feelings are completely unnecessary. What is important for you to do is to process your failures through meditation or journaling or by speaking to somebody else about those feelings. Make sure that you are not simply letting yourself believe that you're never going to succeed simply because you ran into a challenge. Sure, those challenges can be downright discouraging, but that does not mean that you're never going to succeed. Always remind yourself of that. And if you have to, dedicate an entire page of your journal towards things that can help to lift you up and boost your spirit when you're feeling discouraged by a failure. The key to achieving your goals is in never giving up. No matter how cliched it sounds, that is the truth. You will never succeed if you give up the first time you were challenged. You will never succeed if you give up the 50th time you were challenged. You have to know when and when not to give up. The next step will help you understand how to do that. In the meantime, remember that you should always keep trying and looking for alternatives when you find yourself up against the wall and feeling as if your plan is going nowhere. Let it out. Express it. And then when you are starting to feel better and regroup, give it another shot. You will be glad that you did. Acknowledging when something isn't working and moving on. Here's the thing. None of us are infallible. And yet most of the time when we come up with a plan of action, we usually decide that we are the only ones who are capable enough of ensuring that our plan is at its highest capacity. Sure, you're the one who knows where you want to end up, and you're the one who is putting most of the effort into getting there. However, sometimes no matter how successful you are, you may be prone to having a blind spot. Having a blind spot isn't a bad thing. Even the most professional of writers cannot adequately proofread their own manuscripts because they are prone to having a blind spot to their own shortcomings when it comes to the manuscript. That doesn't mean that they don't know their faults or haven't worked on improving them. What it means is that they have spent so much time working so closely on their manuscript that they have a blind spot. They are biased. They have a hard time seeing their work objectively enough to recognize when something doesn't work. And that isn't really a bad thing. It is just a human thing. Sometimes we may put so much work and effort into doing something one way and finding that it fails again and again that we aren't willing to be able to look for an alternative path. This can be extremely damaging to somebody who is working hard on achieving a specific goal. If they are too blinded by the course they have set for themselves to be objective about the challenges they are facing, it can waste precious time and resources on recharting a path that is doomed to fail again and again. So how do you know when you've reached a dead end? You need to ask yourself some very important questions. For example, are you being honest with yourself about the path you are on right now? Have you been ignoring negative experiences or feedback rather than learning from it? Are you being more emotional than logical when it comes to the approach that you are taking? Have you acted impulsively rather than strategically in some way? If the situation you were in were reversed, what would you tell somebody else who was undergoing what you were dealing with? Are you wasting more time or money than you anticipated without getting the results you anticipated? And what if you were going down a difficult path? What would you think of as the worst case scenario if you continue down this path? Is it utter destruction? And do you see yourself evading this fate in any way, shape, or form? If not, then it may be about time to let go of your strategy or plan and go back to the drawing board. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you are having a hard time with something and the path that you are on is not leading to the place you want to be. Only you can define success, and sometimes success is only achieved by knowing when to give up and try something new. Staying motivated. The trick to achieving your goals really comes down to staying motivated. It can be so easy to lose that spark of motivation and begin slipping when it comes to making the effort necessary and carve out the time you need in order to succeed. You might feel like it's okay to skip one day of working toward your goal, but soon you find that it has become a slippery slope and you're tumbling down day after day of ignoring your plans. Motivation is tricky. If it wasn't, more people would be able to achieve their goals and make their dreams come true. Fortunately, There are ways that you can make sure that you don't let the motivation to succeed pass you by. To begin with, you should set the time aside every day to look over your progress and scan over what you have done and what you have yet to do. If you are keeping a journal, flipping through it can be all the motivation you might need to get fired up and get to work so you can add more pages to your checklist of completed items. Another trick to staying motivated is to stop abruptly while you're working on something and don't allow yourself to go back to it until the next day. For example, only give yourself an hour or two to work on a task and stop while you are still fired up about finishing it. Don't burn yourself out by dedicating more than your allotted amount of time on your task. If you do that, you will easily find the motivation and pick up where you left off the next time you get a chance. Motivation can be fleeting, so it can help to have visual reminders of your goal in places that you see frequently. You can create a poster or motivation board full of images and quotes that help to inspire you and keep you on track. You could even begin to ask other people to ask you about your progress, so that you have the extra incentive to continue working and moving forward. If you are able to keep up your motivation, the rest should come with relative ease. Just follow the step-by-step guide, and you will find yourself full steam ahead toward achieving your dreams. Conclusion. Sometimes there is nothing more overwhelming than being faced with the task of achieving a goal that is important to you. However, it is more than possible to become successful in ways that you may never have imagined possible before. By following this step-by-step guide to planning for success, you will address the things that often keep even the most motivated people from becoming successful. There is no shame in accepting the fact that you are human, and that as a human, we have faults that need addressed before we can plan for success. It is wise to remember that each of us has shortcomings and challenges that are unique to us and our particular situations when it comes to achieving the things that we hope to accomplish. If you are ready and willing to face those obstacles head-on and provide yourself with the opportunity to become successful, rather than fearing your success or sabotaging yourself by overworking your mind and not allowing yourself the chance to process, then success is only a step away. All you have to do is continue to try and keep your goal clear in your mind. If you can't do that, just refer to the steps in this training so that you will get right back on track and continue working toward achieving your goals. It has never been easier to become successful. This world is full of opportunities and technological advancements that make it easy for anybody anywhere to have a voice that millions of people are able to hear. If you are able and willing to understand these resources at your disposal and utilize them to your greatest advantage, then there is no reason why you can't make your dreams a reality. Your biggest obstacle will always be yourself. That is why planning for success involves so much introspection and discipline. Without those two most fundamental things, no matter how realistic and exciting your plan may be, you are bound to run into challenges that may be impossible to overcome. As long as you are ready to face your fears head-on and follow the steps outlined for you in this guide, then success is only a step away. But the only person who can take that step is you. Fortunately, everybody else is capable of creating the structure and routine that is necessary for success. Even if you work better without any structure or routine, as long as you are willing to work your hardest to see that your dreams become reality, then they will. There is no reason to be discouraged when the goal that you have is something that will fulfill you and bring meaning and passion into your life. There is nothing more important than that. And so, starting today, make yourself a promise. Promise yourself that you will go through this guide and remember all of the steps that you need to take now and every day after today in order to make your dream a reality. Remain devoted to achieving those goals and filling in the pieces of your jigsaw puzzle until you finally have the big picture laid out before you. Nobody can do this for you. And if you start today, you're already on your way to achieving your dreams.